I am rolling.
Oh, you're rolling? All right. Well,
Okay.
hello, I'm
Hi.
here with Matt. I'm Nye, and we're here to interview him about his job at Phoenix Comicon. So first off, are you a cat or dog person?
Ooh, I would have to probably go with a cat.
Cat? Ooh,
Yeah.
Wow.
I lived with my sister, and she had 2 cats. Growing up, we never had cats or dogs because my parents were allergic to them. So
Oh.
I would have to say I have more experience with a cat.
Oh,
And I think if I was ever to get a pet, it would be a cat just because it's less maintenance.
this is very true. They take care of themselves, and
Yeah.
sometimes they don't even need you. Right?
But my parents are retired. They live in Sun City, and they now have 2 cats. So I think that whole allergy thing was just a ruse to not have to deal with pets for their kids when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to ask them about that.
Yeah, that's something to dig into, right?
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite number?
My favorite number? I would go with number 8. Because it's
8?
also like infinity.
Yeah,
I mean,
there you
it's
go.
like
That's awesome.
it's
you
on
know.
the side.
Yeah, exactly. 8 can turn into infinity.
Yeah.
And it's divisible by 2 and 4.
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
8 is enough.
8 is enough. Exactly. Awesome. And my final question for the interview is, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
Is there a reason why?
I've just always liked blue ever since I was a kid. So
Yeah.
you've asked me my favorite. What was my favorite
Pet,
my
cat or
favorite
dog.
number.
Yeah.
And then don't I have to answer like what my favorite mission is?
Oh, well, yeah,
And then like the flying distance of a African
yeah.
sparrow swallow.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, if we want to go into the Monty Python thing,
That's not where we're going here. That's not where we're going.
No, that's not
Okay.
where we're going, actually. No.
Okay.
No. Okay, now on to serious questions.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so what do you do
Yes.
at Phoenix Comicon?
Well, I am the convention director and founder of Phoenix Comicon.
Is that an important role?
Well, I like to think so, but I think if you ask everybody else, they're like, nah, we don't really need that around. My job is to sort of provide the overall vision and direction for the convention from year to year, and even within that year. It's to make sure sort of that the quality control is good, that stuff is happening when it should, and that we're exceeding the expectations of our attendees, of our guests, and of our volunteers. So my job has changed over the years.
I say so.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, there's a lot of tasks that I used to have to do personally that, at this point we now have great staff and great volunteers who are able to handle it. And as the show has gotten bigger, there are things that I never had to worry about before that I now do. In the last few years with our growing attendance, I never used to have to worry about crowding in our exhibitor hall. And now all of a sudden, I need to worry about ingress and egress into our exhibitor hall. And
Flow control.
after 2014, the hallway of the West Building, where the Metro Marché is, that food court, coming in from the street, at a certain point, the convention center and the police department they didn't shut it down, but they started to allocate the people who were coming in. And all of a sudden I had to be concerned with like the amount of people that you could have in a hallway at one time. And I'm like, I just want to put on like a fun convention, right? Like fun activities, great guests.
Mm-hmm.
And my concerns are, how many people can fit through a doorway and how many people can be in a hallway at one time.
Wow, that's a big change. So according to my notes here, you started the convention, started everything in 2000 and...
Checking my notes as well. Yeah, 2002.
2002. Yeah, exactly. That's what I had written down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your primary vision at the time? Because comic book conventions were still kind of like a black sheep of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You had your Star Trek conventions. You had some anime conventions.
Mm-hmm.
There were quite a few like little ones like Leprechaun going on here.
Yep.
And locally. So what was your inspiration to say, hey, I want to do a comic book convention that will service 80,000 people in about 10 years?
So I moved here fall of 2001, and my background is I'd worked on political campaigns.
Oh,
and so I had
that's
studied.
juicy tidbit.
I had studied political science
Uh-huh.
in college, and then out of college I had volunteered, and then I went to work as a paid political consultant, primarily through the Midwest. But I had grown up reading comic books. So, 12, 13, I'm reading G.I. Joe comic books, Transformers. I got into Captain America, and he was an Avenger, so now I was into the Avengers, and Spider-Man's guest appearing, and now Spider-Man's pretty cool. And when I was 15 years old, I started selling my excess comic books through classified ads and Comic Buyer's Guide. This is pre-internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
The internet doesn't. It may existed in military function, but it wasn't around. So I would place classified ads, send me a self-addressed stamped envelope for my catalog, or send me $1 for my catalog of comics. And I would then eventually do some display ads, listing different things, New Mutants 98, $3. And I would then set up at comic book conventions in the Minneapolis area, which is where I was growing up.
So you started there, but not even,
No.
even before. So
Yeah.
so my notes were wrong. It wasn't 2002. It really was 19...
Let's say I would have been 15, so that would have been 1990.
1990.
Yeah, and so
So you're a comic book convention starter veteran.
way back in the day, I mean, my parents would drive me to conventions in the family station wagon. We would load it up, and these were one-day affairs, in a hotel ballroom.
Yeah.
And I would get I'd get my table, and I would set up some long boxes, and I'd have little like displays, so I could take my comic and I could display, and I'd take a Post-it note with a dollar amount on it. And the show would be open from like 10 till 5, 10 till 6. And my mom would just sit in the car and she'd read a book, or she'd do some, needlework, stitch work. My dad would just have a ball game on the radio, and they would, they'd check in on me on lunch and bring me a sandwich. And then, that was it. And
Were
at
they
the end
ever
of the day,
concerned about you at all?
I don't think so. I think they saw it as, as this little entrepreneur, and I think they thought it was just kind of fun, oh, look at our son, he's got these little comic books, and we can kind of support him.
And they weren't anything in the comic book or pop culture at all. So it
No.
wasn't like you weren't born into that family.
No, not
which
at
actually
all.
a lot of kids are now. Which so that they're second generation,
Yes.
third generation comic book geeks.
But my parents took me
So you're first gen.
to Star Wars,
Uh-huh.
they took me to the movies, and even just growing up, I was watching G.I. Joe and Transformers on TV, and this was back when they'd have commercials running saying, hey kids, get your parents to buy you the G.I. Joe comic. Well, I got my parents to buy me the G.I. Joe comic, and I'd have a subscription to it, and that's really kind
Awesome.
of what started it all.
That's great support.
Okay, so that's your background,
Yes,
you know,
now-
from your notes. And
Yes.
so when I moved here, I had been working on political campaigns for 5-6 years, and I was a little bit burned out. And I just wanted something to do on the side.
Yeah.
And
poli-sci, never imagine.
yeah.
So kids, if you want to start your own comic book convention, get a poli-sci degree. Nah, maybe not. Okay,
Yeah.
bad advice.
Um,
Stick with underwater basket weaving. That's still bad
that
advice.
may get you there.
Yeah.
So,
Derailed.
no, not a little bit.
Okay.
I'm back. I'm getting back on the
Okay.
track. So yeah, I wanted to do something that was just, it wasn't a political campaign, something on the side, and ideally make a little bit of money at it.
Yeah.
And I had not read a comic book probably in 6 years at that point.
Ooh.
And so I was thinking, well, maybe I should get back into comic books, maybe I should start, buying and selling them like I used to when I was a teenager. And I was like, man, like, it's been so many years, I don't know what's popular, I don't know what's out, I don't know what people are reading, and I don't even know if there are conventions anymore. And that was my little light bulb moment, because it was like, oh, well, maybe that would be the thing to do, is to organize a convention. And when I was doing them in the Minneapolis area when I was in high school, and then I continued the first couple of years when I was in college, and this was in Kentucky, I would do a Saturday comic book show in Lexington, Kentucky, and then there was a Sunday one in Louisville. And then the next week it would be a Saturday one in Cincinnati and a Sunday one in Dayton. So my vision was, oh, well, I could do one in Phoenix one day, and Tucson the next, and maybe Vegas, and then Reno, and I could do these one-day shows. And I sort of put my money where my mouth was at. And I found Hotel Ballroom Space, which was Best Western, Ahwatukee, I-10 and Elliott. It's now a 4-point Sheraton. We rented a ballroom for one afternoon. It was a Sunday morning, and we had 432 people show up. I had printed up flyers that we got in most of the comic book stores at the time. I placed an ad in Wizard magazine, right,
Hey.
which isn't even around anymore.
Yeah.
And I think we had even gotten a little blurb on the cover of New Times. And that was it. That was the start of it. And, over the next few years, we sort of marginally grew. And I then had a chance encounter with Pat Henry, who's a gentleman that's one of the owners of Dragon Con in Atlanta, and he's also the convention director. And I had this chance to sit down with him for a few hours and basically say, how do you do it? Like, you have like 20,000 people, how do you do this?
What's your secrets?
And he just walked me through how you negotiate hotel contracts, how you get talent, how you motivate volunteers. And that was April of 2005. We did our last show at Glendale that year.
So you say he's your true mentor, right?
He was a mentor, yeah, and he was definitely the catalyst of how to take our local convention and make it a regional powerhouse.
Yeah.
And so 2006 was that first year up Mesa, where it was this 2-day show, and we had 2,600 people, and at the time it was just like the largest convention in Arizona. Like
it's huge.
It was massive.
He took over like 10 hotel rooms, right?
Pretty much, pretty much. And now, I look back at it, I'm like, geez, 2,600. We do panels that have 2,600 people in them. Yeah. And I look at that very first Comic-Con, and we did it in this hotel ballroom space that was something like 2,500 square feet, maybe 3,000 square feet. And I'm like, that's 2 panel rooms that we do, at the convention center. So the scale has definitely changed. And over the years, with Comic-Con being in the summer, we've had people asking for another show in the winter. Yeah. And thus FanFest was born, in cooler climate.
Absolutely. So, we're gonna get into the FanFest questions, but I wanted to kind of focus on your primary role. You say you focus on the vision. Yep. Yeah. So, over the years, has that vision evolved or changed, or are you still holding on to one of your core fundamentals? Because just to be honest with you, one of the things I love.
So you've been lying up until this point?
Of course. Of course. Yeah,
to be honest with you, I've been lying up until this point. I didn't really care what your favorite number was.
Well, actually, 8 was a really wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I never thought about it that way. It's now my favorite number.
Okay.
So really, one of the things I love about Phoenix Comicon is, despite the fact that you've grown into this gargantuan size, you still keep the core heart of the convention, which is like all about the people, the fans, the cosplayers, and I have seen other conferences where they lose that focus. Yeah. So I'm not trying to lead the question, but I'm just saying, how's the vision evolved over time from this tiny little idea to now where you deal with flow control with like ingress and exgress and all these.
I think the easy answer in some ways is, the overall goals that we had back in the day was to exceed the expectations of our attendees. And granted, the expectations back in 2002, 2003 were very low because they didn't know of anything. And you can exceed those expectations by just always providing good customer service to people and giving them a fun event, an affordable event. In many ways, for at this point now 4 days out of the year, we're like Disneyland.
Yeah.
So it's kind of keeping that core value of, you focus on the attendees, you try and exceed expectations, and you just kind of treat everybody well. And you use that as sort of your canvas, and then on that you get to paint sort of other stuff. So obviously the convention has expanded, and when it started it was solely comic books, right? And as it's expanded, we've added other genres because the people who are involved with the convention, the volunteers, the guests, the exhibitors, they have an interest in toys. I'd like to do a toy panel. They have an interest in science fiction. Can we do something with Star Wars? There's fan groups in town that want to come out and they bring in their own interests and passions. The Star Wars 501st getting involved, and then the Rebel Legion, and just different costuming groups. And we're consistently and continuously expanding, the genres that we focus on. Part of it is with Comic-Con, we have the luxury of the Phoenix Convention Center, which affords us so much space to be able to do it. And in some ways, again, I just say, if you keep, you keep your eye on what those main values are, you can just continue to add stuff to it. It's not always easy. And when we moved from Mesa to downtown Phoenix, my concern was that we were going to lose something. Whatever that thing was, we had bottled. Yeah. My fear was that as we were growing, somehow that was going to get shattered and released. And I think we've done a fairly good job of trying to maintain some of it. There's obviously things that are lost over time. You can't always have a 15 to 20 minute conversation anymore with an actor or a comic book creator because there may be a line. But on the flip side of that is we're able to bring out so many more creators and actors that people are able to meet. You know, and you used to be able to walk the exhibitor hall within, you know, 5-10 minutes, right? And you could find that vendor that had a cool thing and be like, well, I'll be back later. You can't do that anymore, right? You're not, you know, oh my God, you got this cool thing, I'll get it later. You'll never find it again. You need to just get it. You just need to get it again.
Yeah.
We've got a great staff, we've got great volunteers, and in some ways I think everybody rows in the same direction, so it kind of makes it, you know, easier. Before we sat down, you had mentioned, you know, you're a fan, you're kind of doing this, you know, from that perspective, and that's the thing, is that we all come to it as well with our own fandom and our own fanness that we bring to the table.
Fanness, is that a real word?
I don't think so.
It should be now.
We just made it.
Alright.
But
Webster, you know, put that down. Fanness.
Fanness.
There we go.
You know, so I came to the table, you know, having been a comic book fan and a Star Wars fan, and you know, Lee Palmer, who's our director of operations, is a Star Wars fan as well. Joe Boudry, who's our director of programming, came to it, you know, with a comic book interest, and you know, he's really big with Spider-Man and Batman. And you just look at the different people who have come into the convention, and some are really big in anime, and some are really big in sci-fi, and everybody sort of adds to the convention. And there was a moment, and I want to say it was maybe 2007, when I knew what we were doing was working, because we had a couple of volunteers, and they came to us and said, we would like to do a zombie beauty pageant.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have no idea what this is, like a zombie beauty, like zombies are like ugly, and you want to do a beauty pageant? And they're like, yeah, it'll be kind of tongue-in-cheek, but like it'll be serious. And I knew that was the moment when what we were working on was working, because it's like, again, we had created this canvas, and we can say, you've got this passion for this thing, this idea.
Yeah.
We will give you space, and we'll give you some resources to make it happen. And it brings in this different dynamic and energy. And then we've been doing, you know, zombie beauty pageant for 4 or 5 years after that.
That is an awesome story, because basically where you have this formula, and you let other people who have the passion, and then let them kind of have kind of like a channel or outlet, or a way to be able to facilitate.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. All right, so on the FanFest.
Okay.
So FanFest, you know.
You're done with the other questions?
Oh well, you know.
I mean, I can keep going.
Like, what's your favorite food?
Ooh, yellow curry, Thai with chicken. Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Cold Thai. Yeah.
So, actually, before we go on to FanFest,
yes.
I want to. The previous question, you know, you kind of used the example of other shows and how they may have lost their way, or whatever they're offering has been somewhat diluted, and that is, you know, that's sort of the concern that we've always had.
Absolutely, you know, that's a personal concern of mine. Like, is Phoenix Comicon gonna lose their soul? And I pray that, and
there are people that, you know, creators in town that as we've grown, they're like, well, they're going to forget about us. And we do have to work harder at making sure we maintain those relationships. I can't speak to any other convention as far as why they've, you know, changed or shifted, other than,
I don't know.
other than, you know, there are so many factors at play. And I don't know what it is about Phoenix. I don't know what it is about what we've created here. But I know when I go to other conventions and when I talk to other convention organizers, we have something special here that I don't think any other convention has. You know, within our volunteer base, within our attendee base, you know, I just don't see it. And, you know, one example of that is there's a group called the Blue Ribbon Army, which is, they started as a Phoenix Comicon fan website page, right? And now they're 6,000, 7,000 followers on it, and you know, now they're, you know, Blue Ribbon Army, they've got a name, they're doing fundraising events. And I talk with my counterparts in other cities, and I'm like, do you have anything like this?
Army?
You know, do you have like a group of people who are so passionate that they've created their own fan group about your event? And they're like, we have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Like, we don't have anything like that. And I'm like, like, we've got something going on here. I don't know, like, what it is.
Yes. All right, so here we go. Shout out to Matt and Jen Hines. There we go.
Yeah.
Because you guys got something unique. So when you watch this, Matt plugged you guys.
Yeah. Hashtag Matt and Jen Hines.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. So FanFest.
No, that is amazing. So and that's why I'll ask that question, because, you know, interviewing or doing, you know, talking to people about like their passion, I can really see that it's something you hold dear, and I want everyone to realize that. No matter how big Phoenix Comicon grows, like, taking the north wing, the south wing, and eventually, maybe taking over the entire city, oh gosh, yeah, that the heart will always be there, be pumping, even if it's in a zombie body.
Yeah, and zombies can come back.
Yes.
I saw that movie too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay,
FanFest.
Yeah, so, FanFest. Kind of walk me through the logic of how it came about, because from our perspective, Phoenix Comic comes over, okay, let's prepare another year, nothing's going on, and FanFest, 3 months! Ah! How are they gonna pull that off? What the heck are they thinking?
Yeah, so first off though, we did a countdown, right?
Yeah,
3, 2, 1, and people are like, what the heck is this? It's a guest announcement. Yeah. Nobody had any clue.
Yeah. Surprise!
Yeah, so we had been asked for a number of years to do a show in cooler climate, and I know what people meant was they wanted Phoenix Comicon to be in cooler climate. And there's a couple of factors for why Phoenix Comicon is when it is. It's a whole lot cheaper for us to get the convention center and hotel rooms downtown.
Yes. Cost is a big factor.
And because we use everything at this point, the cooler months are peak season in Phoenix, and there's so high demand that we just the only time we can get the space is in the summer.
Yeah, only doctors and lawyers can afford the wintertime, right?
Right.
Where they go golfing.
Right. So
nothing against doctors or lawyers.
So to be able to do a colder show, a show in cooler climate,
cooler show,
meant doing a second show. And as we have seen in other cities, a city can typically support about 2 events of this nature. So you look at Dallas has Dallas Comic-Con and Fan Expo Dallas. It's actually the same company. And you got Toronto Comic-Con and Fan Expo Toronto, which again is the same company. And so you look at cities and they have multiple ones. And so we kind of looked at it and said, it really would be nice to do a show where you're not melting. And we look at different facilities, and as much as we wanted to be downtown Phoenix, again, it was a little bit more expensive, and that led us to look sort of out of the box as it would be, and leading us to Glendale and the University of Phoenix Stadium. So it was really our desire to do another show. Now, the unexpected nature of it, that nobody knew it was coming, we'd started talking with the University of Phoenix Stadium, this was last year, and it was maybe in July. And they had said, well, because we're an NFL stadium, we never know what our schedule is of available space until April of that year, because that's when the NFL releases the schedule. And they said, so, right now, if you were looking at this year, we have these dates in like November and December, but otherwise we won't know until April of next year. And initially I was like, there's no way we can do it. There's just no way, it's too soon.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, that would be like 4 months. We've done a show in 4 months before. It'd be smaller. I think we could do it. So I asked each of our directors, hey, what do you think about this idea? And I figured, if they say no, then we just won't do it. And to a person, they're like, I think we can pull it off. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think we can pull it off. So clearly, I'm blaming all of them for like the, nothing. We're just finishing up with Phoenix Comicon, getting ready for the next year. There's nothing, all of a sudden, FanFest! Really big!
Yeah.
So
Friday.
Friday! Well, Sunday.
Yeah.
So the hope with FanFest is that much like Comic-Con developed on its own natural, organic path, that FanFest will be able to do the same thing. It is in a different facility that's got different challenges and benefits. It's in a different time of year, so there's some things we can do that we couldn't do during Comic-Con. And, we look at what we did last year, and it was a very well-run show, and we learned a lot from it, being 2 weeks before Christmas, being 3 weeks before Christmas, there's a challenge there. One of the benefits we saw was a lot of attendees used it to buy Christmas presents.
Yeah, perfect time.
Yeah. And, so it kind of changes the nature of the event.
That's really awesome. And, from an external perspective, I felt it was an overwhelming success, because I had all these worries too, logistics and people and
right.
So and I hear from the staff that it blew everyone's minds how well it went.
Yeah.
And from the feedback, so So good job on
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So so now that you got that under your belt, and you had a whole year to prepare for this Fan Fest, are there any special things that you're doing this time around that was not able to be done last time? Like it was on your bucket list, but it just never came around.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is really because we put together the event so quickly last year. Being able to get guests was a whole lot more difficult.
You got David Ramsey. I was like, whoa.
And so, we do look at the guest list we had last year, and it was really good. But there was kind of an aspect of, we announced the show, and everybody's like, well, who's coming out? And it's like, we don't know. We just announced the show.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on at it? No, really, we don't know. Like, we signed the contract.
Yeah, we have space.
Like, we signed the contract, I think, on Wednesday, and we announced it on Saturday. So when people were like, well, who's going to be there? No, really, like, don't know yet, but we'll get you people.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at some of the talent that we've got coming out this year, it's much more focused. I think there's much more interest in the guests that we have, and that's because we've had more time to be able to work on it.
Yeah.
And what we've also learned from some of the programming we did last year was, kind of what worked and what didn't. We have much fewer programming spaces, so it's about getting a little bit more creative. And also being able to do some other stuff. So one of the going back to something we mentioned earlier, one of the really nice things that we just couldn't do last year, we just didn't have enough time to pull it off, was we really wanted to do that one party, like on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
There's nothing else going on, so this is going to be it. It harkens back to earlier years of Phoenix Comicon. That first year we did Geek Prom, that was like the only thing. So this year the Blue Ribbon Army is doing Fan Fest After Dark.
Yeah.
It takes place at the Renaissance Hotel, and all the money raised goes towards Kids Need to Read. And so that was something we couldn't do last year because we just didn't have the time.
And nobody knew what to expect too. So
Yeah.
Now everyone can prepare for it. So.
And they have a better idea too. So I know after Comic-Con this year there was much more interest in Fan Fest and people were much more excited about it. I think this year will go even smoother than last year because again we learned still it's 3 weeks before Christmas. We understand that people have other commitments. People may not be able to attend the full weekend. But that's why FanFest is great and why we've kept our prices purposely low so that people can afford to come out for a day and still get some holiday gift shopping, maybe meet that actor, maybe meet those comic creators, and ideally be able to see some of their friends.
Yeah, awesome. So, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. Time flies, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Can you believe you've been talking for about half an hour now?
Oh, I can believe it.
Oh yeah. Oh, I got more questions if you want.
I got more time. What time is it? We're good. Let's go.
All right, cool.
You got another 57 minutes before I'm
really, you have to do something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm totally.
Of course, I kind of thought you meant like how time flies. It's been a year since FanFest last year, and oh my goodness, how time flies.
No, not that. We're talking about it.
Yeah, you're. Oh, I see. It's all about. Okay.
It's all about you.
It's all about you.
It's all about us. Yeah. No. So one of the things that I love about Phoenix Comicon is that it's a largely volunteer-based organization. Like the volunteers are the heart, the soul. I mean, you're the heart and soul, but they flow. They're the blood.
Yes.
They get everything done, and that's one of the things that you really cultivated over the years is growing and scaling up from like a few volunteers to like such a massive team. What's one of the biggest challenge? I know this would be something that we talked to the volunteer coordinator with, but like what was one of the major challenges that you faced when you were starting to grow that volunteer base, and before you had to have a director focusing on that, and how that kind of took off over the years from your perspective?
Well, at the beginning it was just tough to get people to volunteer to start off with.
Yeah.
The first year, I had a friend who put together the flyer. My mom helped me at registration. My dad was like security access control. I mean that was the volunteer base,
Yeah.
And I had a couple people approach me.
Your parents.
Yeah, and after that first year, I had a couple people approach me who then kind of helped out the next year. Hey, I can help out with some stuff, and I can run some panels.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I look at.
Are your parents still involved?
There's a funny story there, and so a couple of there was really three key volunteers at the beginning. A gentleman named Eric Kask, who's a City of Mesa police officer, David Oakes, who's a community college teacher, and then a guy named Chris Callawon. And Chris Callalong was just, I think he was like this high school student who just came out to help out, helped us through, college. I think he went to U of A down in Tucson. And, pretty much from 2003 through probably 2010, 2011, he was a volunteer in some capacity. And
Wow.
Eric Hask volunteered, through 2008 or so. And again, in different capacities. And David Oakes, who is that very first volunteer, is still a volunteer within the programming department. Now, the funny story about my parents is my parents ended up moving to Wisconsin sort of in the midst of this growth of Phoenix Comicon. And they moved back, and we were getting bigger at Mesa. We were going to be like a 2-day show. And my parents, were like, this is my mom, Matt, your father and I just don't think we're going to be able to help you out anymore. Since your dad's heart surgery, he just can't stand as long anymore. It's a 2-day show. So, your father and I just don't think we're going to be able to help you out. And I'm like, well, that's okay, because we've got lots of volunteers who are helping us out, so I think we're all set. To which my mom responds, so what are you saying, you don't need us? It's like, you can't win,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. You can't win.
So, the challenges in the beginning were always just trying to get volunteers,
Yeah.
and then, to be able to train them, quickly and effectively, to be able to do their jobs well. And there are times where we've done a really good job at that, and there are times where, unfortunately, we haven't done a good job at that.
Yeah.
And, you can kind of look at the path of Phoenix Comicon, or, when things go well and things don't go well. And if something
Everything goes well. It's all rosy, right?
It's not.
No.
We make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're very open when we make mistakes. And I'm very comfortable with our staff and volunteers making mistakes. That we're human. We make the best decisions that we can. I want to make sure that we're learning from our mistakes, and that we don't make the same mistakes twice. Because as I joke with everybody else, why would you want to make the same mistake when there's all sorts of new mistakes that you could be making?
Yeah.
So,
If you're not making mistakes, then you're not really growing, are you?
pretty much. And learning.
And learning, and learning from it. Yeah, exactly.
So, the challenges today with volunteers is we've got almost 2,000 volunteers involved within Phoenix Comicon. So it becomes, how do you communicate and oversee that number of people to make sure everybody is moving in the same direction, and to make sure that, the heart of Phoenix Comicon, those values don't go away, and that can be challenging. And it just takes, consistent work. I spend much more time these days, working with volunteers, working with staff, sort of making sure, hey, is everything going well? Are you facing any obstacles? There's a lot of cross-department communication that takes place, and really just making sure everything is going well, because what happens over in operations can impact what's happening over in programming, and what's happening in guest relations can definitely impact what's taking place in marketing.
Yeah.
And so it's really just making sure everybody is trying to go in the same direction.
Or, in other words, being the program director.
That would be, making sure everything's working well.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. And, I think you're, especially with your poli-sci degree, you're built for this. Right. Okay. So
I referenced earlier that I worked on political campaigns, and I wanted to work on, Comic-Con and in this industry, because I was looking for something that wasn't as political as campaigns.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that there's anything that's any more political than this industry.
Yeah.
And it's because everybody is so passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can see it even within fans and attendees.
Oh,
You get into a Star Wars, Star Trek debate,
Oh, God.
there's passion there.
Yeah, so we're in, political science, you're only dealing with maybe 3 major camps. So, then you could here you're dealing with, maybe a dozen or more, and they all have differing views. So wow, so you could probably go run a political campaign like that now.
I
Sign
have
you
no
up.
desire. I have no desire.
No desire. You got a full-time job.
Yeah, I do.
All right, great. So if you were to give a message to somebody who's thinking about volunteering for Phoenix Comicon or FanFest, what would you say to them to bring them into your family?
I have had friends who have basically asked me to pitch them on why they should volunteer for Phoenix Comicon, and I find that I don't want to say I'm lousy at getting somebody, as far as motivating somebody. If I've got to persuade somebody to volunteer for Phoenix Comicon, they're probably not the type of volunteer that we want.
That's
So
a great answer, actually.
we would rather have people who are interested in what we're doing, who are passionate about it, you know, come to us to say, hey, I'm interested in volunteering. What positions do you have? And again, you know, I've tried to persuade, you know, family and friends, and it is that, well, why should I help you out? Well, it's me!
Yeah, come
right?
on!
You know, but for people who are thinking about volunteering and, you know, maybe are looking at the website for open positions, you know, there is a sense of camaraderie that exists within our volunteer base. I mean, it's a family. And you'll see that, you know, people will volunteer initially because of the convention or because of the cause or the candidate or the campaign. And what keeps people coming back is the people that they're volunteering with. And alternatively, when people stop volunteering, it's not because they don't care about that organization or that issue anymore, right? Like if you're volunteering for a organization that's raising money to fund cancer research, and you stop volunteering for them, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're in favor of cancer. It probably means you know, you got tired of volunteering for that particular group or those people.
Yeah, and so volunteer burnout does happen.
It does.
Yeah, and like anything else, you know, you can overdo it.
Yep.
Pace yourselves. Right?
Yes. Drink lots of water.
Hydrate.
And get sleep.
Oh, I don't think that happens much at all.
It should, but yeah. Yep.
It's an adrenaline-filled Red Bull evening. Days.
And multiple days.
Yeah.
All right, how about 2 more questions?
Oh, yeah, cool.
It's getting warmer in the room.
It is actually.
So
Well, it's because, you know, you're so hot and I'm so hot.
absolutely. I can't believe we haven't broken the cameras yet.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a question. You know, new offices. You know,
Yes.
how incredible is that you are at a stage where, you know, having a permanent location to call home. You know, tell me how you feel and kind of like the fears of having an office as well. You know, so.
Well, it's a little bit surreal.
Yeah.
Actually having offices and being able to come in on a regular basis, and that there are people working here on a regular basis. To see the stuff on the wall, whether it's original artwork, which were program guide covers, or the stuff we printed and put up on the wall, it's a little bit surreal. It's also very fulfilling to be able to do this on a regular basis and to do it collectively. You know, we've all pretty much been volunteers over the years. You know, there's now a handful of us that are full-time paid staff, and we always just work from home. You know. And we would see each other regularly, you know, maybe every couple of weeks, once a month, and you know, to be able to have the offices, it's a great thing. And as I said, I mean, for me, it's very fulfilling, and I think it's going to be sort of that edge that helps Phoenix Comicon continue to grow and to continue to be well run. A night like this, where we're able to invite in, you know, bloggers and reporters and media outlets to see the offices, to sit down, to talk with staff. We couldn't have done this before. We'd be inviting people into my house. Right?
Yeah, here's in my living room. Yeah. Here's the cat.
So there's a lot more opportunities now that we have the offices. Now my fears, well, we have to pay for them.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's always the fear, is just being able to.
It's a big step. You know.
It is. And, you know, as much as we're all fans who are doing Phoenix Comicon, there's an aspect that, you know, the convention it's got to make a profit. You know, we believe that there's a way to be able to do that, you know, affordably for attendees. We always keep a look on our expenses. There are sometimes things that we're able to cut or to do differently to save us money that does not have an impact on the convention. Sometimes there's decisions that we make that does have an impact on the convention. We did away with lanyards a couple of years ago because there was a cost savings both on a physical cost of the lanyards as well as a labor cost, because we would assemble them. And when people assemble lanyards, it pinches your fingers and it cuts it.
Yeah.
But there's very few places in the convention where you can make a single decision and save $10,000 to $12,000. And when we can come up with multiple of those, it means we can continue to keep our prices low, or we can reinvest that money in bringing out more guests or bigger guests or doing more programming or taking over more space.
So that's awesome. These offices are really nice. And,
Thank you.
And any thought of like turning it into like a geek museum and having like regular tours?
I haven't thought of that.
Oh, there we go. Find an idea in your head.
You know?
Hmm.
We could have wax versions of like the staff in
Yeah.
here. Mm-hmm.
In cosplay.
And cosplay.
Yeah, in cosplay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
I think we will do more sort of open house events like
Yeah,
this.
because now that everyone's kind of like assembling together, and you can bring in your personal paraphernalia and,
Yep.
and put it in your offices and things like that, rather
Yep.
than showcasing it just at home.
Yep.
That can lend to some really incredible, like I saw the zombie themed room,
Yep.
and you got the Star Wars
Yep.
themed room, and yeah, it's yeah. So
Yep.
think about that.
More opportunities.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay.
You know.
So I guess the final question.
Okay.
Here we go. Final question.
Final question.
So, now Matt, now that you've had all this power in your hands, what are you going to do with it? What's your next big thing that you want to do with this immense power that is known as Phoenix Comicon? If you had if you had something that you wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been holding back.
Mm-hmm.
What is
Are
that?
you leading someplace?
No,
I
what's
think
what power?
I don't know. We're all kind of fans of Halloween as a holiday, so maybe you should just kind of keep your eyes out for something fall of 2016.
Oh, so you heard that here. Very first time. Halloween is a very fun time of year.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
All right, wonderful, Matt. Thank
All
you
right,
so
thank you
much
so
for your
much. I
time. I really
appreciate it.
appreciate the extra time, and hope you had fun.
Absolutely. Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
watching. Cool.